Hello friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck Roll. Alright, we are on day 3 of our living room table that we're building, and let me show you where we are. Before I went to bed last night, I pulled all of the weights off of this thing and just basically let it dry overnight. Then I attempted to muscle this thing up onto the sawhorses so we can work on it. This thing is really heavy. So that's going to be a real fun part, muscling this thing into the house. But anyway, I think it's starting to look pretty good. What I now want to do is remove all of the base pipe that's sticking out over here. Actually, it looks like I got to do a little, since this isn't 100% even, probably what I'll do is I'll just go across here with a saw and cut it off in a nice straight line, and that will serve that purpose. But I want to use a router to route off all of this all the way around. Probably use the saw again on this side and then route off the little bit of edge that's sticking out over here. Then we can start working on putting the facing on it. I'm going to put facing on the front and on the sides, and then we'll attach the backsplash to the back. I'm halfway thinking now, just based on how heavy this thing already is, that I'll probably assemble the backsplash separately, and we'll screw that thing on when we get it into place inside the house, because otherwise this thing, like I said, is going to be even more difficult to carry. So that's where I think we're going to start. We're going to start by sawing off the sides here and on the other side. Also, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a couple of holes into it, because there's an electrical outlet here on the wall and another electrical outlet here on the wall. Now they got these little cool things here, which basically it's a little cap that you can put over the top of it, and what you do is you drop the insert into the hole. You can run your cord through there, then you put the cap through it, and it kind of plugs up the hole a little bit, and I'll probably put one here and another one here on the desk, and then I can run cords up there and have electricity, like a little power strip or something up there if I needed. I'm gonna have to go to Home Depot and try and find one of these. So I was looking for them the other day, and I didn't know where to look, and I didn't even know what to call it. So I figured, okay, well, I have one at home that I put on my desk over there. So I think I'd pull that one off, and we'll bring it over to the Home Depot and say, hey, you got one of these? And see what they can do for me. But yeah, that's also part of the agenda today. Alright, so I finished by sawing off the excess. Basically what I did is I drew a line about 1/2 millimeter beyond the edge of this and cut along here. So this side here is finished, and I did the same thing on the other end here, just because that way I don't have to hit it again with a router. Now this was the side that had about a 2-inch lip here, so I did actually go through with the saw and cut that off. There's still about about a millimeter or 2 of lip along here, but I want to hit that with a router, because I'll get much closer and much more of an accurate cut if I do that with a flush cut router bit. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side, where there's still a little bit of a lip here too. But when you're doing a flush cut router bit, you don't really want to have like a 2-inch chunk of wood sticking out there. You want just a little bit to trim off, because otherwise the router tends to bounce around a lot and you don't get as clean a cut. So that's the next thing I'm going to do, is flip this thing over, run the length of both ends here with the router bit, get that nice and flush, and then I think I'll probably end up going in the house and bringing this thing in and getting some rough measurements, see how it's all going to fit in there. Alright, so I've gone all the way around. All of these edges now are nice and flush. I've kind of sanded it off a little bit just to smooth it a little bit. I'm going to have to do an awful lot more sanding before we're done here, but it's at least kind of a rough shape now, the way I want it to be. And I got all the edges nice and flush here, so now I can, when I'm ready, I can start putting the facing material. And basically, let me show you how that's going to work. This is going to be the facing material, and basically I'm just going to attach this to the side here, and then we'll route that off and get it to the point where it's flush with the top and bottom. And that way you won't see all of this in here. You'll see this, and it'll look the same on the side as it does on the top, and it'll look really nice. So that's sort of the next step here, and before I can get in there and do any exact measurements, I got to actually attach at least one side of the facing so that I can get in there and put it on the wall, and figure out exactly how much I have to cut on the other end in order to make it fit in the space I want it to fit in. But this should be pretty easy because it's just a flat surface against a wall. When I did the one in the kitchen, there were some curves I had to deal with and some angles I had to deal with, and that required a little bit of work. But this is going to be a lot easier because it's just going on a flat wall. So first thing I'm going to do now is I think I'm going to prepare one of these facing pieces, attach it to probably this side. I'm going to have to figure out which side at this point is going to be the front, which side is going to be the back, and at that point we'll decide whether I'm going to do the facing piece, the first facing piece here, or at the other end. So let's figure that out, and I'll get back to you in a little bit. Alright, after considering a number of factors, I decided that this side is going to be the front, and that's going to be the side next to the wall. So that means that I wanted to attach the faceplate on this side. This is going to be just a rough thing. I'm getting it glued into place right now, and then once I get it glued down and sealed, then I'll route the edges just like I did when I routed here, and then we're going to round the edges at some point and get it all sanded down and look real nice. Now once I get this piece in there and sealed for a little while, then we can put this thing on the wall, and I'll be able to calculate exactly how long the other end is going to be, because I'll know, I'll push that one up against the door jamb in there, and then we can go in here, figure out how much I have to cut off of this end. And once I do that, I can put the faceplate on that side, and then we can put the faceplate on the front piece, round that all off, get it all sanded down and nice and smooth, and then we can do a lot more sanding just on the surface just to make it all smooth. I drew a few lines here when I was cutting, and so I'm gonna have to sand that off. There's still a couple of like little uneven places here too. I also got a little glue mess I got to clean up here and stuff like that. But that's all part of the sanding process. Then we'll stain it, and then we'll put an acrylic coating on it, and this is gonna look really nice. So I'm happy with how it's coming out so far. I'm going to give this thing a little time to dry, and while I do that, I'm going to run over to Home Depot and see if I can find a couple of those little things that I can put on the top that'll be the pass-throughs for the cables. I don't know if Home Depot has them, but I don't know. I'll have one in my hand so I can at least show it to them, and maybe they'll know what it is and where it is. So I'm going to let this sit and seal for about an hour or two, and I'll catch up with you then. Alright, so here's the first fit in, and I mean we're basically in the right position here. It's a little longer than what I wanted, which is good. You can always cut it shorter, you can't always cut it longer. Basically what I wanted to do is stop at this point here, but you also got to remember there's another 1/2 inch piece of lumber I'm going to face this with. So I actually need to cut it back about here so that when I add that extra 1/2 inch piece of lumber on the end here, the facing material, it will hold up, it'll be perfectly flush with this edge here, which is what we want. But I don't know, I think this is going to be pretty cool. It's also going to stick out a little bit more because there'll be a little bit of a backsplash behind it, and I'll need to know specifically how long this is to figure out how wide to make the backsplash. In fact, I'm going to bring that piece of lumber in here, and we'll set that into position. That'll kind of give you a better idea what this thing's going to look like in the end. So yeah, this is sort of what the backsplash is going to look like. It'll just kind of run up the wall a little bit, and will be attached to the base of the table, and it will stop at the same point this does. Now it's a little bit longer, and that's okay. We want to be able to cut it off a little bit because once again, you can cut it shorter, you can't cut it longer. So it's always good to start with something that's a little longer than what you need. And I'm noticing there's a little damage on this wood here, so we'll probably end up making that side down so that you don't see that. That's just one of those things you have to kind of figure out here, trying to make it all look good. So I think we're good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mark my lines here so I can figure out where I have to cut this thing off, and then we'll subtract another 1/2 inch from that. We'll slice it off of this side and get going on this. We're making good progress. Oh, and by the way, I found a couple of the little feed-through pieces here that we're going to put onto this. There's one here and one here, and they'll be right above the electrical outlet, so we can run wire up there if I want. I may not have something in there all the time, but it'll be nice to not have to, you know, run an extension cord underneath and all the way around and up over on this side. That just looks bad. If I can run it right up through the middle of it, that's going to be much better. So at some point, we'll also position the holes for that. All right, now we're back out in the garage again. I've measured where I want my lines to be. I've cut off the about 1.5 inches here that needed to come off, and I've temporarily put on the, or at least begun the gluing process of putting on the edging piece. So we're going to let that rest for a little while, let that all set up, and then we'll route that down, get that nice and smooth. And once I get that smooth, then we're going to put the piece across the front edge. And that's going to go all the way across over here. And that'll probably sit overnight. And I got to go back to work now starting tomorrow. So it'll probably sit for a few days. But I don't know, maybe we'll get a little bit more done yet. So I'm going to let this rest for a little while. And I'll catch up with you in a little bit. All right, it looks like I misjudged time a little bit more than I thought I had. It's actually a little later in the day than I thought it was. So I'm going to wrap this video up for now. This thing has been sealing now for about an hour. I want to give it a little bit more time. This piece of wood was a little bit bowed, so I want to give it a little extra time for the glue to cure completely before we let it loose, for fear it'll kind of bend itself off again here. So come back next time. We're going to finish up the laminating on the front and probably start doing the sanding, get the edges rounded off real nice. And then it's going to be sand, because it takes a lot of this to get this all ready, get all the edges nice and smooth, clean off all the little glitches that I made here. You know, there's a little bit of difference in level here. I'm going to have to clean that off. Get some of the pencil marks and stuff like that off. That's a big part of a project like this, is sanding it, getting it ready to be stained. And very likely we may start staining it on our next video, but it is coming along nicely. I'm very happy with how things are going so far, and I think we're off to a good start. So thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.